And welcome to Beerfield's Fantasy Football. I am your host at Hot BFF with two B's. As always, joined by my co-host coming to you via the wonders of the internet from Springfield, Illinois, Dan Thury at Thury BFF with two F's. Dan, how are you?
I am a bit tired. Work was crazy with Cinco de Mayo this weekend, so I'm ready to start drinking.
Cinco de Mayo, margaritas and tacos?
Fuck yeah.
Stereotypical Mexican drinks?
They're oh so delicious.
Yes, they are. Well, if you like tequila anyway. Anyway, we are excited to have all of you that have decided to join us this week. Thank you. You guys are saints. I don't know why you do that, but you do. So we appreciate you. You can follow the show on Twitter, Instagram, Untapped at BeerfieldFF, Facebook and YouTube, Beerfield Fantasy Football. We're also available on Spotify, iHeartRadio, iTunes, Stitcher, Podbean, any place you can get podcasts, Google Play. Like, rate, leave a review, leave a not good review, whatever it is you want to do. Just leave us some comments. We also have merch, which none of us are modeling right now, but if you want to see that, you can go ahead and message the show. That, I believe, takes care of all the promotional stuff. So we got a good show for you here today. I have been slacking. Dan has not been. So I have not yet created my rookie rankings. So what we're going to do is we're going to create those live and on the air today. And we're going to pretty much give you a behind-the-scenes look of what kind of thought process goes into that. So I'm basically going to think out loud as we put that together while Dan's there to tell me why I'm right, why I'm wrong, why I'm an idiot, and give me moral support as I try to put together my rookie rankings following last weekend's draft. So without further ado, I've got like 3 to 4 rounds to put together depending on time. So let's go ahead and get into what is fueling us today.
What's fueling Beerfield?
All right, Dan, what do you got that was definitely not sent to us?
This was not sent to us by our listener. Third beer he did not send us from Gary Jones. This is Quilter's Irish Death. It's a dark, smooth ale. It is from Iron Horse Brewery out of Ellensburg, Washington.
All right. As for me, I will be doing the show's third ever bourbon review. I have Old Forester's 1910 bourbon. This is part of their special release series, basically. That goes along with the 1867 and 1920. So the 1910 was their first double-barreled bourbon. There was actually a warehouse fire at that point in time, which took out part of the warehouse where a bunch of bourbon was stored, charred some barrels, so they removed the bourbon from those barrels, placed it into new barrels, and then aged it, and this recipe is a replica of that recipe. So this is, just spoilers, one of my favorite sippers, so we will have a fuller review on that later on in the show.
So before we move on ahead, I have to read how one fan on Facebook described this beer. She says, Irish Death is like Barry White's voice, traveling down a well-oiled bowling lane into a pile of teddy bears.
So I take it it's smooth.
It's smooth, soulful, and it makes me feel sexual things.
That's weird.
That's weird, right? Like,
and on that note,
news.
Dan feeling sexual things is pretty much cue to move on, so we're going to go ahead and move on to the news. We have no legal issues to get into this week, so let's just jump straight into the roster section of the news. As a formality, the Eagles picked up Carson Wentz's fifth-year option. This was fully expected.
Yeah, I'm not surprised.
Yeah, the Colts signed Spencer Ware to a 1-year, $1.3 million contract.
Wouldn't be surprised if it doesn't make the team.
I wouldn't either, given the fact that they have Nyheim Hines and Marlon Mack, and he'll really be fighting with Jordan Wilkins for that running back 3 spot. I think Wilkins has the edge, but we'll see how that goes.
Yep.
The Vikings declined Laquan Treadwell's fifth-year option for 2020.
And in other news, water's wet.
Yep. Fully expected. Treadwell has not lived up to expectations, even though he's come into a slightly usable piece over the last few years. We talked about this as we discussed Dylan Mitchell and Will probably later on in the show.
Yes.
That third wide receiver spot is not wide open. Treadwell may not even be a lock to make the team this season.
I wouldn't be surprised. I think just given that they didn't, attack the wide receiver position until later on into day 3 and not through free agency means that Treadwell's job should be somewhat secured. But if any of these rookies or UDFAs stand out, I think his job.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because behind him it's like Chad Beebe. So there's not exactly a lot pushing on Treadwell to get it done this year, but they're not committed to him beyond this year either. So it's not like he has a stranglehold on it.
Yeah.
The Redskins declined wide receivers Josh Doxson's 5th-year option for 2020. This makes more sense. They did draft some wide receiver help this year, albeit later. They've got Trey Quinn. Doxson, like Treadwell, just has not lived up to anything.
Yeah, they also drafted Terry McLaurin.
Yeah, Terry McLaurin and Kelvin Harmon.
So they're ready to overhaul this receiving core, which means that I think Paul Richardson's the only one who's pretty safe right now.
Trey Quinn flashed a bit last year, but he wasn't healthy. So I mean, it's not like he has a stranglehold on a job either. So
no,
we would like him to.
We love Trey Quinn here.
Yeah. The Jets claimed Luke Falk off of waivers for whatever reason.
Okay.
And just because of, you, Dan, the Broncos waived wide receiver Kris Hansen.
Bye-bye.
Bye. In injury news, Isaiah Crowell tore his Achilles during team activities. He's going to miss the entire 2019 season. This led to the Oakland Raiders going out and re-signing Doug Martin, which I somehow did not have earlier in this.
That's fine. I think this is going to... It shakes up the rankings a little bit. At least for running back, spoiler alert, I think the top 3 is set for most people.
The top 3 is set. The order on the top 3 running backs is not set.
Yeah, and I think that's okay because those are the only 3 running backs I really want to own. But I think from board, they already came out and said that they believe that Doug Martin can be, a mentor to Josh Jacobs. Doug Martin knows the offense. He was somewhat productive in that offense last year. So I don't think it necessarily means that Jacobs steps into a full 3-down back role, but
I could see Doug Martin being a 10 to 15 touch change of pace.
Yeah.
And that also would need to be talked about, gives Doug Martin another year of possible fantasy value as a flex or a fill-in spot. So that's something to keep in mind as well. I mean, he did do all right down the stretch when he got the chance after Marshawn Lynch went down.
Yeah, I mean, this is not going to turn into a Chris Carson, Rashad Penny type of situation.
No, not at all.
At least I don't think so. But with Doug Martin, he's not the worst running back in the world. Like I said, he knows the offense. He should have a role at least early on, but this is a training camp battle to watch to see who can earn the starting job throughout preseason.
Absolutely. All right, and in retirement news, kicker Sebastian Janikowski. So big old Seabass is gone.
We will drink in his honor.
We will.
Because he likes to drink.
And he looks like it. Running back Jamal Charles is officially retired. He was almost a thing again in Denver and then never was. That knee injury, he never recovered from it.
Yeah, I mean, he had multiple ACL tears. He is still will go down as one of the best running backs to play the game and one of the best fantasy, I think just players overall. He
really kind of put together the modern style of like Alvin Kamara running back that you see now. And Jamal Charles was really one of the first to be that dual threat out of the backfield. I'm going to catch 50 balls on 80 to 100 targets a year type of running backs.
I mean, yeah, he kept the Marshall Falks and the Tumbles. Like he kept that modern of now back that we see nowadays alive. And
it's a lot more common nowadays.
Yeah, and he did it being pretty undersized throughout most of his career. It's just, if it wasn't for injuries, I think we could have been, talking about the pretty historic career.
Yep. And then Chiefs linebacker Derek Johnson, who also had a nice career, just giving him a shout out. And now my favorite part of the news, the Laugh Out Loud segment.
Laugh Out Loud News of the Week.
All right, so we got to go in the way back machine for this first story. May 2018, Dallas reports Tavon Austin could get 12 to 24 touches a game. May 2019, Tony Pollard could get up to 30 touches a game.
Are you what?
Yeah. So, first off, Tavon Austin backed into a corner, if you're still believing in that type of thing, for a worse version of himself.
I mean, what?
Dallas is going to Dallas.
Who says that? Like, oh my God! Like, I understand a 4th round pick, and yeah, fucking Zeke. Like,
we're running back.
Yeah,
and Amari Cooper, running backs, getting
Gallup.
55 touches a game.
Yeah. Oh my God, that's great.
Yep. And the other story this week, Cliff Kingsbury replied, "We'll see," when asked if Kyler Murray would start week 1.
Who is the backup there now?
I'm getting there. He later continued, "We have Brett Hundley here, who we're super excited about."
Because he's a worse version of Kyler Murray? Like,
the GM later simply replied, "Yes," when asked the same question.
Oh my God! I mean, that's like the worst attempt to blow smoke, like, of all time. Yeah. We drafted this guy number 1 overall. He may earn the starting job. He may not.
Yep, we drafted Brett Hundley, though. There's going to be a competition, and the GM's like, "No, there's not. We're not even going to try to masquerade this." So Cliff Kingsbury still needs to learn some coach speak there. Trying to
I don't want to live
people.
in a world where Brett Hundley versus Kyler Murray is like an actual thing.
I don't want to live in a world where a coach is trying to get Brett Hundley hype. All right, let's try to figure my life out.
Hopper figures out his life.
You know, those always seem shorter when I make them.
That's a great drop, though. Hopper figures out his life. It's like, he's getting married in like 3 weeks.
Yeah. 2 weeks from tomorrow.
Yep.
We're recording this on Friday, by the way, if you're keeping track.
We are.
All right. So for this segment, basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through and try to figure out rankings. And the reason we're putting this together is, 1, because I was lazy this week and didn't actually get it done yet. And 2, we thought it would be cool to give you guys some insight into how we think about this stuff and to kind of think it out loud and see really what goes into it when we're debating who to put where. So we're going to be building these rankings based off of a standard 12-team, 1 quarterback, 1 tight end, no premium format. I know that's becoming a bit more rare, but that is still your common everyday type of player league. So we're going to go ahead and build rookie rankings based on that, which does more apply to Dynasty. This is not for redraft purposes. But we're going to focus on consensus, and we're going to focus on trying to break it down. We'll keep an eye on time. The idea is to hopefully get through 3 rounds. If we have time, we'll do 4. So 36 to 48 players that were drafted. So going to go ahead and kick this off since it is my rankings. Dan will be here for moral support, and I'm just going to ask him right out the gate. Is there another option for 101 other than N'Keal Harry? Is there anybody else that we're seeing as more of a sure thing or more of a long-term contributor than N'Keal Harry landing in New England, who was our number 1 player coming out of pre-draft?
I think you can make an argument for Josh Jacobs and even Miles Sanders if you're going for more, of the long-term, outlook. I don't believe in the backfield in Philadelphia, the whole back Miles Sanders. They've, they wasted a sec, or they used a second-round draft pick to take him, even with Brandon Jordan Howard, who's only on a 1-year deal, or at least 1 year that's left. And for Josh Jacobs, you believe in Doug Martin, as a thing long term. So if you want to go for more running back, yeah, I have no issues with taking Jacobs or Sanders 101. N'Keal's in a great spot, in New England, but he's tied to a 41-year-old quarterback.
So I do think Harry contributes year 1, and I do think long-term wide receivers have more value, especially ones with the potential to be elite. My concern on Josh Jacobs, you already mentioned Miles Sanders. My concern with Josh Jacobs is the guy that didn't necessarily beat out Damian or Najee Harris either for the majority of touches at Alabama. So as much as we like Josh Jacobs and as much as he's going to be in conversation for this number 2 pick, Running backs also have a shorter shelf life. And obviously team need comes into play when you're drafting your rookie teams, but if I'm looking at it in a vacuum overall and not from a team need standpoint, if you got a wide receiver who has the potential to me to contribute is a wide receiver 2 from year 1 and grow from there, a la what Michael Thomas did, for example, then I'm probably going to take that due to just the long-term viability of that particular asset.
Yep, and I completely agree with that. I think if we weren't concerned about what the future is like post Brady, then I'd be well on board. I still have Harry. I still have Harry as my 101. It's just a lot. It's just a lot closer for me now.
Yep.
Given how running backs tend to produce earlier, on a grander scale, and just with what Jacob, Sanders, and even Montgomery have looking at them in terms of touches in year 1, you can make an argument for going for one of those 3 running backs first.
I think you could, and ultimately one of those 3 running backs are those 3 running backs are probably going to be my next 3 to 4 picks. So let's just go ahead and get into them. I'm going to plug N'Keal Harry into my number 1. So out of Josh Jacobs, Miles Sanders, David Montgomery, DK Metcalf, the question becomes, who deserves the 2? DK Metcalf we know is raw. We ranked him as a high bust potential, so I'm really not willing to take him with the 2nd overall pick. So you're really looking at Josh Jacobs, Miles Sanders, and David Montgomery. So process of elimination here, and Dan, if you hear me say anything off color or that you don't agree with, let me know. But David Montgomery's got Tariq Cohen to worry about, which means he's never going to see bell cow type work.
He won't see, he won't see the pass catching work to give him that true like Le'Veon Bell, Todd Gurley type of outlook.
Right. Even though I think he's probably capable of that, as long as Tariq Cohen is there, they're going to find ways to use Cohen, which could potentially cut into David Montgomery's upside, even though I think the floor is going to be decent. But you saw with Jordan Howard, you plug David Montgomery into that. Yes, I think he's probably a better pure runner than Howard is. You're still not looking at elite level or the potential for elite level performance.
He's the better what Matt Nagy wants from his playmakers.
He absolutely is.
And that's, I think, why Jordan Howard got moved out in front. While he, increased his, his catch rate.
He was never that dynamic in space.
And he's not made. He's too one-dimensional for an offense that he wants to run.
Yep. All right, so David Montgomery's out. So now it becomes Miles Sanders and Josh Jacobs. Yeah, Josh Jacobs in Oakland, who they see as a 3-down back, but in college didn't really work a ton as a pass catcher. He was more of going to bang it between the tackles and up the middle, which is what Marshawn Lynch was. We've seen this in Oakland before. And then you got Miles Sanders. And when it comes to Miles Sanders, it really believes on which version of Doug Peterson are you going to believe. We know Eagles backs can produce behind that offensive line. Now, granted, it's an older line, but you look at his primary competition, Jordan Howard, Corey Clement, Wendell Smallwood, Josh Jacobs, and what stands out about them, it's the fact that at some point over the last 2 years, minus, Josh Jacobs, who was just in the league last year.
Josh Adams.
Josh Adams, that's what it is. I don't know why I have Jacobs down. Oh, yeah, I have Jacobs down because I was talking about Jacobs. Josh Adams, sorry. Pardon me.
You're good.
Josh Adams, who was just in the league last year. You talk about Eagles running backs, and you talk about all of them at some point during the season. And the reason is that you haven't seen consistent usage out of Doug Peterson for these guys. They've all produced, and they've all produced in stretches.
I think you can also make a point is because they haven't really invested into a running back outside of Ajayi when they traded a 4th-round pick for them. It's they really haven't had a running back that could trust to do that. I mean, Josh Adams didn't get hurt. He lost his job. Wendell Smallwood produced until he got hurt, then lost his job because Josh Adams, stepped in, played well for a game or two, and then he lost his back again. And Corey Clement, we didn't like coming out of Wisconsin to begin with. Flashed as a pass catching back because Darren Sproles got hurt. Yep. I think it's been more of injuries and plug and play. They used a 2nd-round pick. I believe Sanders was a 2nd running back off the board.
He was.
This is the first time since LaShawn McCoy that they've invested into a running they could see as a long-term answer.
And this is
and that's why he's not the true 101 or the true RB1.
Yep, and this is the flip side of the coin. Jamal Charles had 250 touch seasons with Doug Peterson, over 1,600 scrimmage yards with him. You also look into it a bit further, and I'll get to this when we talk about J.J. Arcega-Whiteside, but just going to go ahead and put it out there right now. Tight ends and running backs are used more in Doug Peterson's offenses than wide receiver twos. So,
that's a very fair point.
The question here becomes, does Josh Jacobs or Miles Sanders have higher upside? And I think the answer is, and this is different from what I said last week because I looked into it, I think the answer here is Miles Sanders has higher upside.
It's easily Miles Sanders. And for me, it's because it's a better offense. I believe in the Eagles more so. And not just the offense, but the coaching, the way that they build, the way that they draft, and the way that they build their team. And the fact that Sanders, we liked him more pre-draft, a pre-draft more than Jacobs. Jacobs has a lot of upside on tape. We love what we saw. He didn't run the combine. He posted an okay pro day. It's just, for me, I have a little bit more faith in Sanders because he at least was able to produce one true bell call type of season in college. Outside of Jacobs, which you mentioned, couldn't beat out the Harris brothers last year. And he couldn't beat out Bo Scarborough. So there's a reason why he didn't see a bunch of touches, and we shouldn't be seeing the next Alvin Kamara because he didn't see, a bell call type of production.
Right. And the more I thought about it, the more Miles Sanders, I'm not saying he's going to be Jamal Charles, but Miles Sanders has a very Jamal Charles-like type of skill set. He's not undersized and he's not quite as explosive, but he can do that in the passing game. He has the ability to make some people miss, and he's a good runner. So, and Charles produced with Peterson. He knows how to use this type of back, and he went out. You don't spend a second-round pick on a guy if you don't see upside for them. You might see more Jordan Howard short yardage, but Jordan Howard has 1 year left on his contract.
Yep. I think they only traded for him just so they can get a compensatory pick for when a team decides to overspend for him.
Yep.
So I'm on board with Miles Sanders as the 102. Like I've been back and forth between him and Harry.
Yep.
To be perfect.
So I think when you break it down, then I think that this kind of sets my next probably three players. Then there? I think it's probably Josh Jacobs, followed by David Montgomery, followed by DK Metcalf.
That's my top five. We have the same exact top five. I've been warming up to Paris Campbell and Deebo Samuel almost right around where DK Metcalf is, just because of the type of offense that they're in. In comparison to Seattle, not a pass-heavy offense. I think that'll definitely change. They don't draft two receivers, bring in a bunch of UDFAs, and really help develop the offensive line if they don't want to have Russell Wilson throw more. I think the next guys after the three running backs there are my next three. DK, Paris, and Samuel.
Yep, the next guys after the three running backs gets a little bit more interesting. So DK Metcalf, the reason you put him here is, yes, he's raw, but when it comes to the wide receivers, he has the athletic profile to be a number one with the draft capital put into him and a fantastic landing spot, since we don't even know if Doug Baldwin's going to play this year. So
I think he retires. I mean, there's been reports of him retiring. So this is why, even with Metcalf, with Tyler Lockett, who can play them the true two, maybe one until Metcalf gets, it's not so raw anymore. But that even brings in, guys like Gary Jennings and David Moore. And this offense should not throw the ball, I think, 430 times.
Yep.
That's not going to happen this year.
I agree. So now, after those first five of N'Keal Harry, Miles Sanders, Josh Jacobs, David Montgomery, DK Metcalf, and again, single quarterback. So we're not really thinking Kyler Murray yet, because wide receivers and running backs are going to carry a lot more weight in single quarterback format. So now,
if we're talking super flex, the 101 is Kyler Murray.
Yes.
We're just going to lay that out right now.
Yep. But we are not. So now
No,
you kind of get down into what I consider the second tier. You've got a path to targets and touches, but these are guys that have some question marks that are around them. You mentioned Paris Campbell. You also have to start looking at the 2 tight ends here. And you could make a conversation here about potentially A.J. Brown, who was actually taken ahead of DK Metcalf. But the issue with A.J. Brown, he landed in a Titans offense that does not throw a lot. In fact, the last time the Titans were 20th or better in pass attempts was 2011. That already has Corey Davis that signed Adam Humphries. So not really a clear path to targets despite his talent. You got Noah Fant and TJ Hawkinson, but in single tight end without premium, as hard as tight ends are to come by, I still don't think you can spend a 106 on those two.
And it's pretty for tight ends to actually produce in year one. It took 2 big injuries to the Giants for Evan Ingram to produce in year one. Goddard was the best rookie tight end we had last year, and that's because he's in an offense that loves to use dual tight ends. So as much as we love the landing spots of Noah Fant, and I like the overall outcome for TJ Hawkinson in terms of his long-term future,
it's not time yet.
It's not ready for tight ends just yet. I love the landing spot for both Paris Campbell. Samuels is not. It's a good landing spot because they still need a number 1 receiver there. And when you look at Samuel's athletic profile compared to Dante Pettis,
I'd mentioned Brown. I hadn't even talked about Debo yet.
Yeah,
Debo's in conversation. My issue, my hold up on Debo and not bringing him up just yet is that, they spent even higher on him. He could be a 1, but Dante Pettis, Marquise Goodwin, Jordan Matthews, path the targets again. You're throwing a rookie wide receiver in there who we liked Debo. We weren't super high on Debo, but you're throwing. I don't know if you put them side by side if I would be higher on Debo than Pettis.
It's tough because we've seen Pettis do it, and I think that's where you can stop the flip coin. It's just we saw Pettis do it with not Jimmy Garoppolo, and that's kind of where things changed for me. Is that the entire offense, I think, somewhat changed. They bring in Tevin Coleman. The whole running back core is a fucking mess. At that point, George Kittle broke out in a massive way, but they did this all without Jimmy G.
But so we don't know what Jimmy G is going to target. We don't know what his tendencies are. He hasn't played enough games. We don't know what he's going to look for. Nobody's really going to have rapport with him. So you can make it. I think you've got a good argument for Deebo Samuel, and I think he's definitely probably going to get ranked with the next 3 picks.
Yeah.
And that's what it comes down to, though. It's Deebo Samuel, Paris Campbell, who produces more year 1 and who has the higher upside, I think, right here. Neither one. I think Deebo, now that you mention it, and this is why you're here to talk me off a ledge, weirdly, I think Deebo has a clearer path to targets because while Pettis has done it and Pettis has been good, like you mentioned, it hasn't been with Garoppolo. And Pettis, I don't think, is built to be a 1. I think he's built to be a slot guy or a 2 that is a good possession guy. With Deebo playing outside, I think A.J. Brown is supremely talented, but I don't think that you can make that good of an argument for taking him with where he landed. And Paris Campbell is obviously going to play second fiddle to T.Y. Hilton in an offense that, outside of Dante Moncrief and 10 touchdowns, hasn't produced a number 2 wide receiver. So,
and I think for me, I have Paris Campbell ranked ahead of Deebo by 1 slot, and that's because I believe the Colts offense is just better overall. The role, they bring in Devin Funchess to solely be the possession red zone threat. You have Eric Ebron, who's going to work the seam as a stretch tight end. You have Ty as their main deep threat, who is also getting older, who is also prone to injuries. And we like Paris, because he's a more athletic version of Curtis Samuel, and we got to see him in an offense that will likely use him almost the same way as just a underneath guy with big playability, because he's fucking fast and he moves really well in space. Right? It like, for me, it's just a coin toss on what you want. I think Paris is higher upside but lower floor because of path to targets in year 1. Deebo, I think, has the opportunity to take over the number 1 spot with the 49ers, but who knows what that offense is going to be with everyone healthy.
So at this point, I'm going to go ahead and stop the debate. I'm going to plug in Deebo Samuel and then Paris Campbell. And
Perfect.
that goes into the way that and you know this, and anybody that's listened to the show for a little bit knows this, that goes into the way that I tend to value my players. I like floor. If I'm spending a draft pick, I want you to contribute. If you contribute at some level, I did not waste that draft pick. You might not ever live up to a 106, but if you are a 106 that lives up to a 110, I'm fine with that. If you're a 106 that doesn't live up to a 212, which, not that I'm saying Paris Campbell would do that, I'm less fine with that. And I think the path to targets is a bit clearer because you don't have a true wide receiver one in San Francisco. We've seen Goodwin flash. We've seen Pettis flash. We know George Kittle is awesome, but the running back situation's a mess. The wide receiver situation's kind of a mess. You don't know that Goodwin's going to be there. Goodwin and Pettis both have problems staying healthy. Whereas in Indianapolis, you mentioned Ebron. You've got Marlon Mack that's going to have to get targets. Jack Doyle's coming back. T.Y. Hilton's going to be there. They brought in Devin Funchess. So I think that the Deebo Samuel path to targets is a little bit clearer than the Paris Campbell path to targets.
And that is, I mean, like I said, this is a coin flip.
It is a coin flip. You're absolutely right.
So.
All right, so moving on beyond those two, we get into probably A.J. Brown, and then you got to start looking at the two tight ends, I think.
This is really difficult.
This is where it gets hard.
The top 7 for me, I like. You go all the way down from the Hill Harry to 3 running backs, Metcalf, Campbell, and Samuels. Now you get into, I like Damon Harris's landing spot in New England. I don't believe that Sony Michel is a guy that's going to see a bell cow type of role. I think the knee is a problem to get ahead of and not pile on touches too early on, in his career while they still have Tom Brady and the Super Bowl window. Then you bring in AJ Brown, who our wide receiver 2 pre-draft, fantastic talent, but in an offense that has proved shit in terms of passing. Who the quarterback is long term. Brown could overtake Corey Davis at some point, but the path to targets that we always talk about, it seems okay, but it seems very minimal. And then as you said, the tight ends who are very elite now come into play for sure.
Yep. So let's break this down. You mentioned Damian Harris with Sony Michel. The thing is that Sony's got the J.H.I. thing going on with his knees.
Yep.
He was very, very good when he was on the field and when he played, though. And New England has a tendency to rotate back. So we warned people about this when they drafted Sony Michel. Now, we will be talking about Damian Harris here within the next few picks, but he's not going to have bell cow work, especially not with a guy that has been efficient with his touches and with James White still there. Damian Harris is going to have to fight for that 30 to 35 touches a game to get himself a piece of that pie early on. And then Sony Michel, again, just drafted last year, so he's not out anytime soon. James White is there for a bit, and you don't know how much longer Brady's there, so that gets a little messy talking about Damian Harris.
Oh yeah, I completely agree. He's my RB4, but it's a own on between. Like as I said before, I almost want just the top 3. I think Harris is going to slide a bit. I think there's other people high on other players that we haven't talked about yet.
There are. And then when we get into TJ Hawkinson, Noah Fant, this was a great debate on draft night, and it's another great debate now. TJ Hawkinson was the pre-draft tight end 1, but he landed in Detroit. You look at his competition in Detroit, it's not that stiff. Jesse James has flashed some. Michael Roberts and Logan Thomas are more blocking tight ends. Roberts had his chance last year, didn't do anything with it. Darrell Bevel, we've seen, well, let me just put it to you this way. I went back a few years, and he averages 51 receptions, 79 targets, 590 yards, and 6 touchdowns to the tight end. Good numbers. It's mostly Jimmy Graham and Vincente Shianko. Just a little throwback for you Vikings fans.
Oh, yeah.
Vincente Shianko. So we know Bevel can use a tight end in a Matt Patricia offense where he seems to be at least somewhat attempting to emulate what Bill Belichick did, which involved Gronk for all of those years. When you look at path to targets, Kerryon John, theoretically, a non-factor. Kerryon Johnson can't really stay healthy and is going to be used as a runner more than a pass catcher, even though he has the ability to pass catch. Kenny Golladay has kind of been signed off on as the de facto wide receiver 1, although he has not, he's coming along nicely, but he's not an elite locked in wide receiver 1. Marvin Jones is coming back. And then you look at Noah Fant, whose competition is Hireman, Fumagalli, Jake Butt, and Flacco is averaging 144 targets a year to his tight ends. So
it's tough.
It's tough. It is really tough here. You talk single tight end. Do you get a potential elite? And this is where I kind of feel like you got to go with what you know in pre-draft talent, right? And when you take landing spot and pre-draft talent and the ability to produce early on, to me, this is probably a stupid early pick on TJ Hawkinson because of what the way the wide receivers and the running backs landed.
I mean, it's tough because we've talked about this is the first spot where I think tight ends come into play. In terms of these tight ends, Noah Fant redraft, I think Hawkinson is the correct dynasty pick in terms of the first tight end taken. I trust that the offense will shape around Hawk a little bit more. I trust the coach at least been able to do it more than the quarterback and Flacco, who may not last even this year, maybe not even into next year for sure. So, like I said, if you're debating between tight ends, it's Fant in redraft and Hawk in dynasty and rookie drafts.
Mm-hmm. And that's what I'm going with here is dynasty and rookie drafts. What Bevel's done with his tight ends, what Patricia I think is trying to build, and the fact that Stafford's at least going to be some stability there for a bit versus Fant, where you don't know if Flacco's even going to make it through the season before Drew Lock gets a call.
Exactly. If Denver struggles, that's going to definitely quicken that process. But we'll go back to the receivers here. You mentioned Brown. I have Arcega-Whiteside and Andy Isabella as my next two receivers. This is where things get difficult because of path of targets. We won't talk about AJ Brown, but we'll talk about Jods here and why he's my next guy up. And that's mainly because of year 2 and the fact that I don't think this receiving core is set after this season. You'll have to sit on him a little bit, and maybe you can wait on him and trade for him after the season. But there's not much else after that. The big debate between a lot of dynasty people could be between Andy Isabella and Akeem Butler and who should see production early on. I think Isabella, just because he had a 2-round draft capital on Butler, it should suit the field earlier on. He's a better and more developed prospect than what Butler is. So you're kind of picking between waiting a year or two to see how these receivers shape up. I won't fault anybody if they want to go one of the top tight ends here or trying to pick between AJ Brown, Marquise Brown, Butler, Isabella, and you're going to see a lot of Mecole Hardman at this spot too.
Yeah, this is where it's hard. I'm not going to advocate for taking Mecole Hardman here. I get Tyreek Hill being gone. I get that Hardman's fast, but that's a guy at Georgia that couldn't beat out Riley Ridley, couldn't beat out Javon Wims, who was a 7th-round pick, didn't show a whole lot on tape. I can't buy into Mecole Hardman. You could also see some Deontay Johnson here because of what the Steelers spent on him, and quite honestly, you're going to hear something weird from me come redraft season. I'm going to be advocating for James Washington because I don't believe Deontay Johnson's anything special.
No,
and
I don't either.
So, my problem with Arcega-Whiteside is this. Peterson's produced one 1,000-plus yard receiver as an offensive coordinator or head coach, and that was Jeremy Maclin. That's over 6 years. He's had zero seasons of wide receivers being his team's top 2 target getters. It's been Jamal Charles, Zach Ertz, Travis Kelce, and Zach Ertz. He's in an offense with Zach Ertz. He's in an offense with Miles Sanders, and I don't know what J.J. Arcega-Whiteside's upside is because you could say, okay, well, you don't know how long Ertz is going to be there, but you got Dallas Goedert right behind him. So what is Arcega-Whiteside's upside? They still have Nelson Aguilar, who got 97 targets last year.
I think
I don't know what Arcega upside is, and that's at least midterm outlook, not necessarily super long term, but it's not short term either. It's not like in with Hakeem Butler, or you've got Larry Fitzgerald retiring in a year or two. It's so
like I think at this point it is more so not this year. You're not drafting Josh because he's going to produce in year. You're drafting him because the Eagles have an out on Alshon Jeffrey. They have an out on Zach Ertz. Deshaun Jackson will likely not be a thing. Surprise, he is still a thing. They've been active in trying to trade Nelson Aguilar. So, like I said, with the wide receiver core in itself seems to be.
But let me ask you this: do you believe Arcega-Whiteside is a better wide receiver than Alshon Jeffrey?
I think they're the same player. I mean, I think they're one. I mean, it's tough because Jeffrey's been able to do it. So obviously, we can't be like Josh is that complete type of player. He's built the same. He's going to be used the same.
And yes, they have an out on Ertz, but I mentioned Goddard waiting in the wings. And yes, you're trying to trade Nelson Aguilar, which I think if they do is his clearest path to targets. Does he get 97 targets out of that with Miles Sanders there, with Zach Ertz, Dallas Goedert? I don't know. So for me, this is super close between him and Fant and AJ Brown, because now you're getting into high-end dart throw territory.
And this is where a lot of people are going to be torn on, and it's tough because none of these receivers have that type of path to targets. You kind of have to go with ups, like you're just kind of taking a shot in the dark and hoping that the draft capital in itself will yield positive results. You look at the Eagles' offense. You look at what could happen. The Titans' offense is pretty shitty, especially when they want to go run heavy. That's why Browns, dropped a bit, and it's just with tight ends because you know that you have to wait at least a year or two for them to actually live up to their production.
Yep. So I went ahead and ranked it while you were
okay.
While you were giving that, and I'll tell you how I ranked it here in just a second. So the way that I ranked it was AJ Brown, JJ Arcega-Whiteside, and Noah Fant. So when it comes down to a debate, I'm going to lean on what I saw pre-draft and what I saw in the player.
Okay.
We both had AJ Brown over JJ Arcega-Whiteside.
Yep.
And I do not believe that Marcus Mariota starts 16 games this season.
No, I don't.
If AJ Brown can win that slot position from Taywan Taylor and Ryan Tannehill gets in, we saw what he did with Jarvis Landry. And even if Ryan Tannehill takes that job and is a 1-year, 2-year starter, that gives AJ Brown a chance to produce. It gives more of a safety blanket type of receiver than Corey Davis is to Marcus Mariota. And while I don't think it's going to be insane production the first year or two, I do think there's a path to production there more so than Arcega-Whiteside. And again, these three are a coin flip. For JJ Arcega-Whiteside, we just talked about him at length. I said what I didn't like about him in the current iteration of the Eagles offense. I agree with Dan. His outlook could get better in the next 2 to 3 years, which is where I think he is worthy of a first-round pick, because he's the 110 right now in these rankings.
Yep.
So I do think he's worthy of that. And then I went Noah Fant because we're running out of guys that are high-end, good landing spot, surefire, hey, they're probably going to produce at some point. So to me, that kind of wraps up that tier, and now you get into an even bigger mess. So some guys that are hanging out here, we've got Damian Harris, who we just talked about. You've got Terry McLaurin landing in Washington with a 3rd-round pick. And a lot of these are going to be 3rd-round picks. So you've got Damian Harris, you've got Terry McLaurin. I don't see anybody else up there necessarily like in that range. You've got Andy Isabella, who was picked 230, Jalen Hurd, and Marquise Brown.
So for me, I'm going to just one more point on Brown. He should start. I think day one, I think he will beat a Taywan Taylor. You're going to have Adam Humphries in the slot. But either way, so after Jaws, I had in my wide receiver rankings. I haven't done my top 40 yet, or my actual a mock draft style yet.
Yeah,
I have Andy Isabella, Hakeem Butler, and Marquise Brown with Miko Hardman there as well. this is kind of where you have to kind of forego what we liked on film and just pray to the fucking gods upstairs that the landing spot will matter more. The Cardinals' offense is completely fucking changed. We don't know how things are going to shape out. So you kind of have to kind of take a stab here and trust draft capital and trust that Kyler Murray can be a somewhat productive quarterback for fantasy, in terms of passing year one. Marquise Brown in a very unfriendly offense at least has the skill set that can help mimic what I think the Ravens want to do from their receivers. Now work over the middle and get open, not be thrown open, but get open. And Brown can do that if he's healthy. The only reason why Mecole Hardman's up there is because he's tied to Patrick Mahomes, and that's really it. I don't believe in his talent. He's not the next Tyreek Hill. He's not Tyreek Hill's replacement. So don't draft him that way.
Yep, and I'm going to go places where I kind of believe in talent here.
That's fine, too.
And I'm with you. So we mentioned Andy Isabella. I think Andy Isabella is way too close to Christian Kirk's skill set for them to coexist in a way to where both of them are fantasy relevant necessarily.
They have like 3 slot receivers there. I mean,
they do. That's what's hard about it.
It is. It really is.
Because I still want to believe in Christian Kirk, who I liked better as a possession receiver. He's a little bit bigger of a body than what Andy Isabella is. Yeah. That's not to say I didn't like Andy Isabella. I like Hakeem Butler there more so than Andy Isabella, based on the fact that he's a different type of receiver than everybody else because he's giant. He is a massive target, but he was also taken almost a full round later, a little over a full round later than what Andy Isabella was. So draft capital is going to play in there. They saw something in Andy Isabella over Hakeem Butler that they liked. I'm guessing the speed and the agility in the Cliff Kingsbury type of offense. But Hakeem Butler, to me, is not a replica of what Christian Kirk is like Andy Isabella is. That was a lot of is's.
I think for those two, it's the argument. I think Isabella is going to produce in his first couple of seasons more than Butler. Butler still has to develop into a peer. Like, he can do both. The offense in his receiving core kind of has to shake out because he was, drafted almost a full or more than a full round before Isabella, or after Isabella was. Fitz could be worked in and out of the offense if the team struggled early on and they let their rookies, take over. I think Christian Kirk is the future 2 in here with Isabella kind of, floating around. It's just if you want to wait for Butler to hit in 2 to 3 years, or do you want that safer floor if you're going between the two? And that's kind of where I'm at and why I have Isabella ranked higher than Butler.
Yeah, or do you go with Marquise Brown, who's passing offense I don't like either, but we know is a massively explosive player that is incredibly small. This is really a toss-up between these 3.
Yeah, I've talked in length on how I feel about Brown. I was pretty against the pick on draft night. Yes, I was pretty drunk when I went on my rant and I got called out by a couple of Ravens fans. But I stick to my point is this: I don't see how a 175-pound receiver who's got the same type of foot injury as Julio Jones and Sammy Watkins is going to find production. The only reason why it's this high is because of draft capital. And
or do you look at Miles Boykin, who was taken in the same area? Again,
look at the offense in general, it's not really shaped for what he can do. And that
I have
fast, ranked not that high,
but it's not shaped to what he can do.
Yeah.
So all this talk has made me lean more towards Damian Harris, weirdly enough.
And that's where I would lean to. You still have Hawkinson, right? Is he still?
No, I put Hawkinson as my 108.
Okay, so you went.
I went Hawkinson. So here's how I got it so far: N'Keal Harry, Miles Sanders, Josh Jacobs, David Montgomery, DK Metcalf, Deebo Samuel, Paris Campbell, TJ Hawkinson, AJ Brown, JJ Arcega-Whiteside, Noah Fant. And I'm going to go ahead and plug in Damian Harris here. And the reason is I'm debating all these guys and what I like and what I don't like about them. I feel more comfortable in knowing what Damian Harris's role is and what Damian Harris's upside is in New England.
He should have at least 1 or 2 games where he'll be a RB 2-1 because Michelle's hurt because of game script and because it's the fucking Patriots. They want to run the football. That's why I like That's why I like this landing spot for him because I think it fits what the Patriots want from the running backs. It fits what Harris can provide to a team where he doesn't have to be trusted to be the every down back. He can have his role, likely play it pretty well.
Mm-hmm. So flagging Damian Harris there is off the board. Then it becomes Andy Isabella, Hakeem Butler, Marquise Brown. And I think you got to start talking about Terry McLaurin here. Or is it Kyler Murray time, even though it's one quarterback, when you're getting into still the 201? I don't think 201 is where you take a quarterback in single quarterback.
No, I think it's a little bit too soon. I think you could see him go at this spot.
It's probably after this tier of players we're debating through.
Yeah, he's going to go around the same time Baker went last year, and that's mid to late second. Like I said, teams could get desperate for a quarterback if they need one. I'm in a similar position where I don't have a mid second. I have two earlies and a late, so I may bite the dust because I have nobody behind Aaron Rodgers in that league. Mm-hmm. I have Gary Jennings up in this spot, and he's only up there because I think Doug Baldwin's done. If it comes out that he's going to play, he'll drop down my board and everything will be fine. I trust that offense over a guy like Terry McLaurin because they're rookie quarterback. It's not a great situation for them there. And I don't even know if Dwayne Haskins is going to start day one.
I don't know if he is either. If he does, you've got rapport with Terry McLaurin, but again, as you mentioned, not that great. But I can tell you one thing for sure is that you're way higher on Gary Jennings than I am, and the reason is simply this: speed guy.
I love
Tyler Lockett's there. David Moore is there. So we've seen Seattle utilize speed guys, but in the history of Pete Carroll and Seattle utilizing speed guys, it's been frustrating and inconsistent.
Yeah, well, I mean, you're going to get that in this entire tier to begin with. I think for me, it's that Seattle went after the two most athletic receivers in terms of spark score in this draft class. DK was 1, Jennings was 2, especially in terms of size adjusted speed and everything else. They got 2 of the fastest guys. They want to stretch the field, and I think the debate's going to be, almost like a Lockett, Paul Richardson type of situation where if Jennings can get on the field, he may catch a couple heaves, from Wilson when a play breaks down and he's wide open because who the fuck cares about the third receiver?
All right, so here's how I'm going to move it through this segment. I'm going to go Andy Isabella next. I'm sold on his ability to move around and them to find ways to use him.
Yep.
In kind of his floor there. I think after that, I'm not going to buy full on into McLaurin. I do like him more than Mecole Hardman, who you had mentioned earlier, but I can't go full on into that yet. I think Miles Boykin is an intriguing prospect, but the Ravens' offense is just scary to begin with. And yeah, Hakeem Butler, like I said, he's different, very much so, than any other receiver there. But as you mentioned, he's raw, but I think there's Mike Evans upside there.
There's a lot of Mike Evans upside. It's just it's not going to be year one unless injuries occur, which you can't account for when we talk about this. I think he's the odd man out in year one in terms of snap counts.
I think so too. But at this point in the draft, I'm willing to play for long-term upside as we go into the top of the second round and guys that don't necessarily contribute year one versus a guy like Marquise Brown whose long-term upside I don't necessarily fully buy into, right?
I can't because unless we see Lamar Jackson take a massive step forward with his throwing ability, you may not see enough targets per game because you may not see enough passing attempts per game. What you're hoping for is that they find ways to get Brown the football. That be handoffs, through jet sweeps, screens, or whatever. That's what you're hoping for from. It's why I like Brown more than Miles Boykin because they use Brown in more of a gadget role, more of a Tavon Austin style role. The least got to get the ball in his hand because he's so explosive with it.
Yep. All right. So that still leaves the debate between Marquise Brown, Terry McLaurin. We mentioned Miles Boykin here. And when do you pull the trigger on Kyler Murray? becomes the other issue. So again, we're sitting at about the 202 here. So
there's other running backs we could talk about.
There is other running backs we could talk about also. The next guy I had listed out was Alexander Madison landing in Minnesota, and then you've got Darrell Henderson landing in the Rams, and Justice Hill with Baltimore, and then the pair of Travion Williams, Rodney Anderson in Cincinnati. If we're looking,
I'm not high on those guys in their landing spot. I have them.
That's what we've got left, right?
I have. So for me, I have, because I ranked my running backs here. I have Darrell Henderson as 5. So my top 5 didn't change. They just changed on just where they're ranked. Justice Hill moved to 6 because I love that fit in Baltimore. You're talking about a guy who's explosive in space. I think they almost built to make this a short passing game and a lot of different read options, and Hill is a perfect complement to Mark Ingram. I did put Alexander Madison at 7 because of Cook's injury history and because he is the clear number 2 in my opinion there. And then I had Love and Gaskin at 8 and 9 just because there's nothing else I truly love or believe in terms of not just talent but draft capital and just anything else.
So you brought up a good point about the running backs, and when it comes to the way I do my stuff, again, I lean towards I want guys that I think will produce at some point. I've already mentioned I don't necessarily believe in Baltimore's offense as much as I like the Justice Hill landing spot. I think at this draft pick, it's a little rich for me. And by the way,
completely fine.
This is a draft if I have extra picks in. If somebody desperately likes people here, I am more than happy to trade those picks, especially outside of the first round.
As you saw in our Dynasty Listener League, I don't value draft picks in this.
I don't either. This is there's dart throw shit show.
There's like the landing spots weren't great. Outside of tight ends, like the top 3 works and it gets kind of murky. Wide receivers look good after about 5, 6, 7, and then it gets kind of murky. It's just not good, and you're just praying that you can trade them. Maybe somebody falls in love and they make a mistake and they trade a 2020 first for your late first. That's kind of what you're hoping for.
Yeah,
like I'm trying to trade multiple picks, 19 picks to get one 2020.
Yep, I would completely be okay with that too, because this is just an absolute crapshoot of a back end of a draft. There are guys in the 3rd and 4th round that I like that I think will probably slip.
Yeah, I agree with that.
So now we get into Terry McLaurin, Miles Boykin, Darrell Henderson, Marquise Brown territory, and eventually Kyler Murray. And you know what? The way this draft is, it's early, but if I was drafting here and I was tasked with what's left, to me, it's a dart throw versus a contributor, right? Sure. So I think right here is probably Kyler Murray time.
Okay.
And it goes against conventional thinking, because I'm one quarterback. You don't really, at the 206, I think. Hold on, 12.
Are we at the 206?
204.
It's a little rich.
It's little rich, but it's not egregious. No, and there isn't anything behind this that I necessarily love, right?
I mean, like you want to start talking about, so we can talk about tight ends again. I love Irv Smith's landing spot. I love Jay Sternberger's landing spot.
I do too.
Waring's landing spot.
And even Dawson Knox landed well. And Foster Moreau and Caleb Wilson, they all landed well.
The tight ends landed in very good landing spots.
Yep, and I think you're going to see, to find value in this draft, you might see more tight ends. And if you already have a tight end, then trade out,
Or you draft one and then you just reap the benefits of having depth.
Right, and I got to agree that Irv Smith Jr.,
he's my 3 now,
is probably going to be the pick here. Is probably going to be the pick behind Kyler Murray. And again, this just goes into how much I don't like the wide receiver and the running back landing spots. and his path to production behind Kyle Rudolph, who they were trying to trade on draft day, who may get cut as a cap casualty post June 1st, who definitely doesn't seem to be long for that team beyond this year. And Irv Smith Jr., is another guy that I think has a decent floor to produce.
And like the Ravens, the Vikings even talked about wanting to use more multiple tight end sets. Why? Because there's no wide receiver 3 there. So you're looking at Diggs, Thielen, Rudolph, Irv Smith, Dalvin Cook in the backfield, improved offensive line. Irv Smith could see Dallas Goedert. He won't likely see his production because the Eagles are great at tight ends. But that's what you could almost expect from Irv Smith if the Vikings decide to go more, of a base 12 route or base 11 route, on their offense and use more multiple tight ends.
Yep.
So.
All right. So here I'm going to go Marquise Brown following this. And this is finally where I feel okay at 2-0, whatever. Just pick 18. So 206. Pulling the trigger on a guy that has upside. In explosiveness in an offense that seems like they want to preface themselves among speed, that we don't really know what it's going to look like.
Yeah.
What we do know is that Hollywood Brown is explosive.
Exactly.
And we know that there's not a lot of other guys left that have the upside that Hollywood Brown does, despite his size, his stature, whatever. After that is probably where I'm going to take a throw at... See, I'm considering Miles Boykin here, Terry McLaurin, Darrell Henderson. McLaurin, again, has a very, very good shot in Washington and a path to targets. I don't want to put two Ravens wide receivers back together, especially because I don't trust Boykin's type to produce in Baltimore's offense. It's a little early for me to start considering Hunter Renfrow, who I absolutely have on my board here.
I need to. I'm not done with receivers, so I'm still kind of feeling it out. Receivers got incredibly difficult after Ashton Dulin, and I have him at 17. So I've ranked 16 receivers.
Yeah.
And then I've also added in a couple. I haven't finished mine yet. I love Darrell Henderson in his spot. Talking about a potential, path to touches. If they want to go, this is the Rams. If they want to go and reduce the amount of touches Todd Gurley gets, Henderson's very explosive, 8.9 yards per carry in back-to-back seasons for Memphis. The Rams have a great offensive line, so I don't fucking care that he did it with the good offensive line, and that's why he's so explosive. The Rams have that already for him. So there is a point where you're talking about a guy who could give you some very solid weeks, especially if Gurley is a little banged up. There is upside to it, and he was a third-round pick. Third-round pick. Capital there.
So I put Marquise Brown in, and then I followed that up with Darrell Henderson and then Terry McLaurin, also a third-round pick. Okay. Look, when it comes to a late second-round pick, again, I just feel like I'm looking for people that have the potential to contribute. McLaurin has a path to targets, a quarterback potentially that he's going to be comfortable with, and we did like him at least a marginally decent amount. So
yeah. And like the late second and beyond, you want either contributors in year one because they have a clear path to whatever they need, targets, touches, or just massive upside. Like that's why I was high on Kalen Ballage last year after the main guys got drafted is upside.
Yeah.
Just potential. Didn't pan out. But either way, that's where you get with these guys. I have Kelvin Harmon ranked outside of my top 12, but he's at 13. Because I think he's a lot more talented than what his draft capital was, at least in terms of what he could give a Dwayne Haskins type of quarterback and a guy that you can trust to throw it into coverage because he's good at 50.
I completely agree with that also, and I think Kelvin Harmon's going to be coming up here relatively soon, and there's even some UDFAs that down in round 3 that
Stanley Morgan ranked already, baby. Ashton Dulin. It's like again, guys.
Stanley Morgan, Ashton Dulin, Darwin Thompson, or not Darwin Thompson. Sorry, there's a
James Washington.
No, Darwin Thompson. Darwin Thompson was good. I watched his tape. I liked him. James Washington, Little Jordan Humphrey, Alex Barnes. I mean, there are Bruce Anderson who landed with Tampa Bay.
God, his athletic profile is pretty bad though.
Bruce Anderson?
Yeah, it's not. He did not have a good pro day from what I saw a player profiler. So I went a little against that because I would rather buy into Jones or like I think they're waiting for the 2020 draft to get the running back of the future. So I think you could see.
I think they probably are too. The athletic profile, you're right, was not fantastic. The tape was good, but it's a place again where there's depth that needs to happen. You get into third or even rookie drafts that go 4 rounds, then that's the type of people you're going to be picking through.
You're just it's all you're just going for shot in the darks. You're just trusting how you viewed players pre-draft process because this draft more so than any other year, at least since we've done this and dating back to 2017. The draft went against a lot of our big boards. It just nothing really made sense. Outside of quarterbacks and tight ends and the running backs, the wide receivers are a mess.
Yeah,
like we were like the fact that Alex Barnes didn't get drafted. Speaking of running backs, now it is blasphemy because he was one of the few running backs who actually showed up at the combine.
Yep. All right. I think after Terry McLaurin, I do have to go Gary Jennings for the same reasons I just mentioned to Dan. I think that we've seen Seattle use this type of wide receiver. We've seen them be productive. It's not necessarily a stable role, but it is a role more so than I think Mecole Hardman or Deontay Johnson or Calvin Ridley or anybody.
Riley Ridley?
Yeah, Riley Ridley, sorry. Or anybody
People
else.
are going to hate us being so low on Mecole Hardman. Like,
I don't care.
I know, which is great because I don't believe in him at all. Like people are like, he's the next Tyreek Hill. I'm like,
no,
first
he's not.
Tyreek Hill is an outlier beyond outliers. Like he, based on all advanced stats and
the fact that everybody thinks he's the next Tyreek Hill says his draft capital is going to be high enough for me to want to draft him even less.
Yeah, I don't like Mecole Hardman, Marquise Brown, guys that we are lower on in terms of what I've seen so far on post-draft rankings. A lot of people aren't like, we won't own them. It's out there. Our listeners, if you take into account our rankings, no one to trade back. This is a draft class where you don't want to own a lot of picks if you can. Trade for more proven players because it's gross, and you can see why. There's a lot of debate and a lot of spots early on in this draft.
Yep, there absolutely is. I'm filling out the rest of the second round, then we'll do a review and hit a third round and wrap up real quick. Because the third round's just going to be a giant clusterfuck of whatever.
Yeah, that doesn't matter in the third round as much.
No, it doesn't.
More quarterbacks, yay!
That's pretty much what it's. Quarterbacks, tight ends, and dart throws. It should be the title of the third round. All right, so to round out my second round, I already mentioned Gary Jennings. At the 23rd pick, I'm going to plug in Jay Sternberger with the Packers. I think that back into the second is probably the perfect time to take him. You're going to have to wait a year. Most likely, you don't know what Rodgers has ever done with a good tight end, but he's talented. After that, Kelvin Harmon, for the reasons Dan mentioned earlier, draft capital was not there. The talent absolutely is there. Washington needs anything that can catch footballs to step up and show that they can do something, and I think Kelvin Harmon has a good chance to do that. And then Justice Hill's going to round out the second round as a guy in Baltimore that I think fits what they want to do with that offense, which is read option, speed. You get him and Lamar Jackson going, there's some fun things that could happen with him. So
I would love to get Justice Hill as a late second because upside is really good there.
The upside is fantastic there. I don't know that the floor is low for sure, but
it just depends on if they want to use him more as a pass catcher. I mean, that's kind of where I'm at. If they decide to use Mixon for the game and a half that he'll be active.
Yep.
Whatever.
All right, let's review things.
Yeah.
Beer review.
All right, what'd you think, Dan?
It's not quite Barry White's voice throwing a bowling ball into a pit full of teddy bears, but it is a solid dark smooth beer. I can't really pinpoint. Hold on. What I'm supposed to be tasting here. It's got some citrus to it. It is very smooth. It's gonna likely have probably a light to medium body. I'm not sure what a dark smooth ale is. My guess is amber, a color, some toffee to it. But if you're looking for a smooth, refreshing type of drink out in Washington, because I promise you can't get it out in the Midwest, this is a good solid choice. And thank you to Gary Jones for not sending us these 3 beers, which I believe was his 3 favorite beers that he sent to us. Go back and listen to.
I also don't think that you pronounced his last name the same time any of the 6 times we've said it.
I probably haven't, but that's that's because if he's been listening to this show long enough, I think that's more of
an expectation. Yeah.
So if you're insulted by this, then I apologize. If you are not, then you have listened to this show far longer than you probably should have.
All right, and I was drinking on Old Forester 1910. On the nose, if you give it a smell, it smells like it's going to be hot. You can get a slight like toffee or dark sugar smell off of it. On the taste, give me just a second here. So the burn hits up front. It's low and slow all the way through. You immediately get hit with like a darker kind of caramel, like almost brown sugary taste. There's a hint of dark fruit that pops up, at least initially. Again, burn is low and slow all the way through. It's definitely a sweeter sipper I think it's 110 proof, so you do get a bit of that alcohol taste through. But not a ton of like leathery or tobacco-y taste to it. It's definitely more of your caramel, dark sugar, fruit type of sweeter bourbon. It's a very, very good sipper. As always, I drink them neat when I review them here on the show. If you don't like my terminology, screw you. Just describing what I taste. I know bourbon guys are a little sometimes snobbier than beer guys, but overall, if you can find a bottle, good luck, but I recommend it.
Yeah, 1910 is, at least from what I've known, and I do work for a liquor store, so I do know some things, ish, kind of, maybe not. They've stopped producing 1910, and that's why 1920 is becoming even more rare at this point.
And I do prefer the 1910 over the 1920.
That's what I agree with that.
Anybody that asks. All right, thank you guys very much, Old Forester and Iron Horse Brewery. Dark Horse, sorry, Katy Perry.
Iron Horse
Brewery for being on the show. Not that you you had a choice. We appreciate you, and we're going to go ahead and try to fly through these last 12 picks as we finish out the third round. So at this point, we're looking for pretty much anything that might have talent left in the third round.
You want to just go through a quick recap of your top
I actually have a I do. So if you're watching on YouTube, you can see it on the screen. So going forward, what we've done so far, we got N'Keal Harry at the 101, Miles Sanders 102, Josh Jacobs at the 3, Montgomery 4, Metcalf 5, Deebo Samuel is 6, Paris Campbell 7, TJ Hawkinson 8, AJ Brown 9, Arcega Whiteside 10, Noah Fant 11, and Damian Harris comes in at 12. That rounds out the first round. End of the second round, we've got Andy Isabella, Hakeem Butler, Alexander Madison, Kyler Murray, Irv Smith, Marquise Brown, Darrell Henderson, Terry McLaurin, Gary Jennings, Jay Sternberger, Kelvin Harmon, and Justice Hill coming in at the 224. So that's what we've got so far as we go ahead and hit the third round. So we look at the third round. We're looking at what do we have left, what can produce. If I get any value out of my third round picks, I am incredibly happy. That being said,
fair assessment. That is very true.
I'm going to go with a guy who, like Trey Quinn last year, I think can give us some value out of a late round pick. This is where I'm going to rank Hunter Renfrow. And I know. It's tough. Mike Mayock obviously saw something he liked about in Renfrow to draft him in the first place. I thought there was a very good chance he could go undrafted. At Clemson, they called third down, third Renfrow. That's because he's reliable. This is a guy who I've mentioned in the past, he's not going to be a weekly starter. He's not going to contribute as a weekly starter. He's going to be a guy that sits at or near the top of your bench that you get 1 to 2 bye-week fill-ins or injury fill-ins out of you, that doesn't completely floor you, that doesn't completely kill your team, that gives you decent floor when you need it and is going to come through clutch. This is Adam Humphries the last 2 seasons. You have to know what you're expecting when you're drafting Hunter Renfrow. It's an offense with Antonio Brown, so you're not going to get a ton of targets. But Tyrell Williams has never been a target hog. The slot job in that offense is completely wide open for Hunter Renfrow to take, and they didn't go out and draft a tight end. So, yes, you have Antonio Brown. Yes, Derek Carr's your quarterback, but you lost Jared Cook, and you don't really have anybody else there demanding targets. So even rookie year, there's going to be some split for a guy that is super reliable. This is an absolute floor pick. This is not an upside pick. This is a guy with absolute floor value that has an opportunity to produce and has a skill set to be a reliable producer. And if he's not, it's a third-round pick. Who cares? You get anything out of it, you're doing well. So you're playing the odds here, some floor.
That is that's very compelling. I mean, like, you defended it very well, because at this point you're not only going for a shot in the dark, so you're going for the guys that you believe in.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you're going for landing spots. You're trying to find some production early on. These are the guys that I'm drafting, and trying to trade away as soon as I can get any sort of value for them. Unless I love the player, I got him here because they slipped, or I'm waiting for them to hit. Most of these draft picks are guys I want to trade away as soon as they hit. Especially a guy like Hunter Renfrow, who I don't think will have consistent fantasy value, if any. So when he blows up for a couple weeks, like Adam Humphries did last year, I want to trade him for whatever I can.
And you know what? If he doesn't produce year one, if he doesn't show anything year one, if he pulls an Austin Carr, who I also liked, you drop him. You drop him for draft cap to have the roster space next year to take somebody in on a trade.
Yeah,
it's just a dart throw for a guy that could be a floor piece that you want to hang around on your roster, and you could use as a chip-in piece or something for a trade later on, or even hold.
That's very fair.
So the next guy I'm going to go with kind of fits that same bill, and I think he's I know Dan likes the other guy that landed here, but I am flip-flopped on this, mostly because this one can stay healthy. This is where I'm going to throw out Travion Williams also. We know Gio Bernard is not long for Cincinnati. That's a fair statement, correct?
Yeah. I completely agree.
Travion Williams is a guy that very, very much excelled in a Gio Bernard type role in college. He ran all right, but where he really excelled was outside of the tackles. He managed to stay healthy, unlike Rodney Anderson, who I'll admit is talented. But if you're looking for a Gio Bernard replacement, Travion Williams fits that a little bit better than Rodney Anderson does, who fits more of a Joe Mixon handcuff role. So I'm going to throw Travion Williams out here as another guy, kind of like Hunter Renfrow, just at the running back position. He's a guy that could be utilized. We all expect Mixon to eventually be a bell cow, but if not, that could be utilized. That could show some value. That probably won't ever skyrocket to, oh my God, superstar status or anything like that, but could be a nice piece to have sitting there when things come up in a clutch. And that's a piece of fantasy rosters that I value, that I think a lot of people don't value. That's the type of guys I like to target as throwing pieces for trades, are guys that are going to sit on my bench that I may not plan on starting, but if somebody gets hurt, then I know I have depth. I value depth.
That's completely fine. A little higher than I would have gone. I have a few guys, including Rodney Anderson, but I'm also...
You're higher on Rodney Anderson, though. That's what I tossed out there.
And like, there's more other guys. Like, we haven't talked about Braislove Moss, Miles Gaskin. As much as I hate to say his name, but Devin Singletary, because he's got the draft capital. And
Miles Gaskin will show up here in a minute. Devin Singletary is getting the Mecole Hardman treatment, where they have the draft capital, and I'm still going to take them because I don't want to own them.
I won't own any of them either. He'll go higher than where I'm even looking at drafting him, but. I mean, like I said, at this point, like I'll keep saying, you're gonna take the guys you want at this point. Like you can almost throw out draft rankings after the second round.
Pretty much.
At that point,
In this draft, you can throw out draft rankings pretty much after the first round.
Fuck, mid-second. Fuck it. Like, I want Kyler Murray here now. That's fine. Can't hate on that pick.
All right, so 301, Renfro, 302, Williams, 303. I'm going to plug in Miles Boykin. Look, I hate Baltimore's offense, especially the wide receivers. Miles Boykin has all the makings to be a very, very good wide receiver. If Lamar Jackson flounders, there's no guarantee that they stick with him. If this run and gun, holy crap, speed offense doesn't work, there's no guarantee they stick with him. But guess what? Miles Boykin's fast. If that offense does work and it does pan out, he has a role. And if it doesn't pan out, he's big. He has a role. Don't know that I'll get him here. Again, it just depends on your team needs and how your draft unfolds because people may value him higher because of the speed-size combo. But now there's two things you're looking for third and fourth round. It's floor for depth and throw in trade pieces or massive upside. Miles Boykin fits the second one, whereas Hunter Renfrow and Travion Williams hit the first.
That's fine. Yeah.
Yeah, there's not really a whole lot of arguing that can happen here.
No, like I said, yeah. I'll give you my takes if I need to.
Yep. All right. Keeping it moving. Now we get a little more interesting. You mentioned Myles Gaskin in Miami. I think he's a Kenyon Drake clone. That's not in a bad way. I love Kenyon Drake. I think it's a bad landing spot because I think they're kind of the same player.
And it's also Miami.
Yeah.
And very, 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 very low draft capital.
You can't really talk up Keyshawn Johnson here, who a lot of people were. Bryce Love, we know I'm not high on, especially landing in the same spot as Darius Geis. Even if you view him as a Chris Thompson type of replacement, which I do, I still would like to wait maybe another couple more picks on him. You got Jordan Scarlett, who landed in Carolina, which is intriguing as a Christian McCaffrey handcuff.
We got one to throw that we haven't talked about. Kahale Waring, Texans.
Yep, Kahale Waring.
Who's gonna really?
So this is tough for tight ends, right? Because you could really advocate for a tight end run here, and there's four guys I have in the same tier that you could advocate for: Kahale Waring, Dawson Knox, Foster Moreau, and Josh Oliver. They landed in Houston. Need a tight end. Ryan Griffin's probably on the way out. They haven't had any production there. To give you an idea, it's Ryan Griffin, Jordan Thomas, Jordan Akins there. Dawson Knox lands in Buffalo. Tyler Kroft, Jason Kroom, and something Neshke.
Josh Allen.
Yeah.
Just kidding.
Foster Moreau, Lee Smith, Derek Carrier, Luke Wilson.
Oakland. I love that spot for him.
Josh Oliver, Jeff Swaim, something Koyak, and James O'Shaughnessy. Those are four tight ends that all have fantastic landing spots. I could advocate a run for tight ends here, honestly. I really could. For me, you are right. It probably would be...
I think Waring was the fifth tight end. I think he was a fourth round pick, maybe fifth. I can't remember where he was.
Waring was the 323. Knox was the 333. Moreau 435. Oliver 305.
Oliver went high. That's a reach, but still great landing spot. Like I said, I love Waring. Talk about upside.
You know what? I'm gonna put them back to back.
Do it.
That's how we're gonna do this. You know what? And it's funny with those two because I will forever associate them with each other. Because the first video I watched at Kahale Waring, they were playing Josh Oliver's Fresno State team. Not Fresno State. It was Fresno State. Anyway, they were playing each other. So Josh Oliver gets the one spot higher because of the higher draft capital, and because he's with Nick Foles, who we know will target a tight end.
Yep.
He's got a great shot in Jacksonville to come out ahead. Kahale Waring, same thing. Great shot in Houston to come out ahead. We just haven't necessarily seen Deshaun Watson use his tight ends in the same way that Nick Foles has. I think both of these guys have. They're so similar to me as far as their athletic ability, the upside that they both have. I think putting them back to back actually makes a ton of sense.
I love it. I just like the tight ends more. Like the depth in this year is even more so bigger than
It's
17.
a great tight end class, and if you're looking for a replacement tight end, it's a great tight end class to take a late round flyer on a Kahale Waring, a Dawson Knox, a Josh Oliver, even a Foster Moreau.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we're gonna do that, and then we've got 6 more to throw in here before we wrap up the There's 7 more to throw in here before we wrap up the episode. So let's just go ahead and try to burn that.
Figured out. I think you should just shoot them all out if you have them all figured out.
I don't have them figured out.
Okay.
But I am gonna go ahead and I'll shoot from the hip here in the interest of keeping this close. Next up, I'm gonna go Jalen Hurd.
Great pick.
I think that he is the prototypical late round pick. They've talked about moving into tight end. I don't know why. He could be a running back. He could be a wide receiver. We know he's athletically talented. We don't know what the 49ers are going to do with him. It could end up being Cordero Patterson for all I know. But either way, 3rd round pick, you're going to go there. I'm going to go Dwayne Haskins.
Okay.
I do not like Dwayne Haskins more than I like Drew Lock. I do like Dwayne Haskins' landing spot and his more than I like Drew Lock's, just because I think Haskins has a better chance at winning that spot out of camp than I think Drew Lock does.
I don't think, yeah. I think Lock, if he sees time, it's going to be mid-season. I think the Broncos would try to not want to just throw him out there. I think I just think if the Redskins get off to a slow start, even if Chase starts, it's going to be Haskins off the gate.
Yep. The next 2 I'm going to throw in are going to be the 2 guys that we mentioned earlier that I don't necessarily believe in, but they're going to have a chance to produce because of where they landed. It's going to be Mecole Hardman and Deontay Johnson. I think
Johnson's going to get drafted super high. He's going to be reached on.
Oh, he will, but I think late 3rd is where these 2 should go, because I don't think there's any reason you should reach on guys that showed you absolutely nothing and checked no boxes. So now we've got 3 picks left in the 3rd round, even though I would typically do a 4-rounder here. Bryce Love, I think, has got to go here. Bryce Love actually probably needs to go ahead of Mecole Hardman and Deontay Johnson, in my opinion.
Yeah. I mean, I do love Bryce, and I have him probably ranked a little higher than I should, but that just means I'll likely own more of them.
He's coming back off the knee injury. You've got Darius Geis there. Is probably going to get the bulk of the touches. Your hope for Bryce Love is an RBBC. I could see an Ingram Kamara thing there maybe, but I don't think Bryce Love is quite, when I say quite, I mean anywhere near as talented, but I do think he could have some value as a pass catcher. He did have a really productive college season, so I do think he's worth the later round pick as a dart throw there, especially if you can just stash him on IR to start the year.
And just a handcuff if you own Geis. I mean, honestly, you're hoping for sort of Chris Thompson type of role, but he wasn't a proven pass catcher in college. But what he did prove is that he can operate extremely well in space. While Washington's offensive line can't stay healthy to save their fucking lives, if they can find ways to put Bryce Love in space, I think you can see a world where both Geis and Love can be productive.
Yep. The next 2 are guys that proved that they could pass catch as tight ends in college, because this is going to be a very tight end heavy back of the draft, especially. Going to go Caleb Wilson and Dawson Knox in that order. I think Caleb Wilson has a very, very good landing spot for his skill set. And it's a guy that's really going to fight with Charles Clay, and who's old, and Ricky Seals-Jones, who has not been able to do it despite having the chances to do it. So I'm going to go ahead and put those 2 there. And then my Mr. Irrelevant pick for this, as I try to figure out life.
It should have been Caleb Wilson.
It should.
I took Trey Quinn, and I think with my last pick in the last pick in a rookie draft 3 times.
I think you did too.
I fucking love them.
There are some UDFAs I like, but I think UDFAs are probably more, for 4th round.
Yeah, for your last picks, like I'll own a lot of Stanley Morgan Jr.'s. I'll try to get Ashton Doolin.
Riley Ridley is there. Devin Singletary, Rodney Anderson is still there. Drew Lock is still there.
There's no way I'm putting Riley Ridley in my top 50, top 40. Top
Miles
whatever.
Gaskin and Dylan Mitchell.
Mitchell's got intriguing upside, as we mentioned. It just depends on the Vikings offense wants to operate. Not high draft picks. I don't think they cared too much about their third receiver. I think they can get enough out of Treadwell this year.
I'm gonna go with Miles Gaskin.
I like it.
I probably should have put him ahead of Bryce Love. Honestly, these will be refined, but I'm gonna go with Miles Gaskin here, just because there hasn't been a lot of buy-in to Kenyon Drake, despite my feelings towards him. Miles Gaskin's another guy that has a crack at getting into his carries. I think that Miles Gaskin is better than Kalen Ballage.
Yes, he is.
So we'll see how all that plans out. But again, in the third round, you're no longer finding sure things in this draft after. I would say Noah Fant, who I had at the 111.
You're basically praying for production that you can end up trading away for a profit, especially for next year's class.
Yep. So as we go ahead and look into this, real quick, just to run down before we end, went about 15 minutes longer than I would have liked, but whatever, I'll take it. N'Keal Harry, a lot of good conversation here, honestly.
Yes.
N'Keal Harry, Miles Sanders, Josh Jacobs, David Montgomery, DK Metcalf, Debo Samuel, Paris Campbell, TJ Hawkinson, AJ Brown, JJ Arcega-Whiteside, Noah Fant, and Damian Harris round out my first round. Going to the second round, Andy Isabella, Hakeem Butler, Alexander Madison, Kyler Murray, Irv Smith Jr., Marquise Brown, Darrell Anderson, Terry McLaurin, Gary Jennings, Jace Sternberger, Calvin Harmon, Justice Hill round out my second round. And then for the third round, Hunter Renfrow, Travion Williams, Miles Boykin, Josh Oliver, Kahale Waring, Jalen Hurd, Dwayne Haskins, Bryce Love, Nicole Hardman, Deontay Johnson, Caleb Wilson, Dawson Knox, and Miles Gaskin actually take me all the way to the 401 because I miscounted. All right, that being said, we are done. As I figured out at least part of my life on this episode, thank you for tuning in. Thank you for listening. Again, you can follow the show, Beerfield FF, on social media things. Yeah. Beerfield Fantasy Football, YouTube and Facebook. Like, subscribe, tune in, check it out. I still have my rankings up that I need to get rid of. There we go. Yeah. Other than that, we certainly do appreciate it. Dan, any parting words before we get out of here? I don't remember what next week's episode is. I think we're going to take a look at some training camp battles next week.
Perfect. I think that's it. Like, subscribe, turn the bell notification on so you know when we go live. If you ever got questions during the live show, shoot them at us. We will answer them to the best of our ability as quickly as possible. And trade your 19 picks. That's my advice.
Yeah, that's what I learned from putting this together is if you're not in the top 11, trade for 2020.
Yep.
Or trade for usable pieces now for people that may be higher on some of these guys, because I know I personally am not high on a lot of these guys.
No. Especially
this draft got flipped upside down from what we thought was going to be a really, really deep draft and something that we get midway through the second round before we ran out. I think this is the shallowest draft of the 3 years we've done it.
Very much so.
All right, we will catch you guys next time. Sometime. Probably Sunday.
Yep. See you guys.
See ya. Bye. Later. Taters.
Peace.
Stuff. Peace.